Hi. Hello. Apparently, I'm live. I don't know what's happening. This is the third time I've set up this live stream on YouTube tonight, and every time it goes out. I have no idea what's happening with the live stream. I usually use a live stream problem, but it certainly is tonight. So I have no idea what's happening. I'm back on live again for the third time in about, I don't know, half an hour. I've had to cancel all the other live streams, so just bear with me while I actually close all the other devices and live stream from here. Wow, what a night. I don't think I've ever had YouTube not work on 3 different live streams. So anyway, I've done thousands of live streams, never had an issue. But anyway, if you're joining us, go down to the chat box if you'd like to and put your city, as I always mention. And if you don't mind, you could like the video as you come in. It helps the channel. And let's get back. Sorry, I've got to repeat myself 3 times, but apparently that's what's going to happen this evening. So basically, what I was saying was, most of the YouTubers that I follow in Italy online, I myself have lived in Italy for 23 years, as I already mentioned, talk about all the positive stuff of eating beautiful gelato in a gorgeous situation in Rome or along the Amalfi Coast or the beautiful Lake Como. And tonight I'm going to talk about some of the things that can go wrong in Italy and do go wrong regularly with the people that I help to move to Italy or give advice to or just have been friends with over the years who've decided that Italy doesn't work for them and have gone back. And the reasons why they do that. Now, this may be very unpopular. I talk about all the positive stuff of Italy every day. So tonight, we're just going to cover the stuff that can go wrong when you live in Italy. So, number one on my list, and as I've just mentioned, I've lived here for 23 years. I speak fluent Italian, and I've had to deal with every possible eventuality, from bureaucracy to registering in different comunes to going to hospital to every possible thing that you can do in a country. I've done in Italy. I've got married here, I've got divorced here, so I know it all. So in terms of filling out pieces of paper and making things happen, I've done it. Okay, I'm not suggesting your experience is going to be exactly the same as mine, but it probably will be quite similar. So here we go. Number one that drives me completely batty in Italy, and possibly you'll be the same, is that Italians are not very united as a nation. Many of us who came here on holiday, fell in love with Italy, have this idea when we're walking through a piazza and we hear the ciao, ciao, and all the laughter and everything, that, we're just going to be brought into this lovely, warm community and family. And, because we don't understand a word that's being said around us, we just take the ciao, and maybe the waiter's quite flirty with us if we're a woman of whatever age, and we just feel like it's all joy and happiness or whatever, because we haven't got a clue what's going on behind the scenes and really have no clue what's actually being said. And I've seen this happen to so many tourists since I've been a resident here. Anyway, so one of the things that is crazy is Italians are a very divided nation. It's not only the North and the South, which you've probably heard about a lot. Things are done completely different there's a line down the middle of the country that runs just above Rome, and the North does it a certain way, the South, but it's much more complex than that. You can literally go 10 kilometers in Italy, and this village hates that village, and this village wants nothing to do with that village. Italians are a disparate bunch of peoples, some of whom have the same blood and ethnic makeup, and some of who have very different ethnic makeup. They've been made up of, Italy's been invaded so many times over the centuries. there's the Germanic North. They were invaded by the Moors in the south. There's a lot that's gone on in Italy, and I'm not going to go into it because this is not a history lesson. But if you're interested, you could look it up, and you might be amazed the stuff that's gone on in Italy over the centuries. Nevertheless, let's say that Italy is sick. Italians, as a rule, as a people, were sick of being told what to do by other people and being invaded or whatever. The last major time that happened was the Second World War, where many of them left and went to other countries, left Italy behind and moved elsewhere. Anyway, this you will encounter once you actually start living here, because you will just assume that all Italians love each other, and you'll start talking about, if you're a tourist, about Italian food. Italian food doesn't exist. Each region has its specialities, and you might be able to talk to your American friends or your family back home and say, oh, Italian food's so gorgeous, the quality of the food's so gorgeous. But actually, if you get down to what Italians eat and the recipes and what they're about, they are completely different from region to region. And in fact, when Italians hear, once you get some language skills, once they hear you talking about how amazing Italian food was, they're completely confused. They don't know what you're talking about. You mean their food? No, just Italian food in general. There's no such thing. So that's the first thing, is that Italians complain a lot. They really do. I mean, here I am complaining, I guess, but Italians do complain a lot. It's a national sport. They love to do it. They love to complain about their politicians. Can't blame them for that. They bitch and moan a lot, really a lot in daily life. And until you get the language skills, you have no idea that they're doing this. So you just think they're all having a lovely time and everything's glorious in Italy and everybody's super happy and enjoying it. But in reality, it might be quite different. It might be very different, in fact. So, yeah, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that when you go shopping, which you eventually will, you'll have to go to a supermarket in Italy. I mean, for the first so many years of my life, I did all my shopping at the market. Every single thing I bought at the market, and it was wonderful. And I still love to do that, and I still do it. I'll probably always do it. I bought all my fresh produce at the market, my vegetables, also my meat and cheese and whatever. But eventually you might have to go to the supermarket if you're living here. You might have to go and buy some dry groceries, toilet paper, all of that. And there you will, no other place other than driving on Italian roads will you encounter what being an Italian is and living among Italians is, because the behavior that comes out of the supermarket and in the car on the roads and highways of Italy is the real Italian way of being, let's say. So you're at the supermarket, you have your basket or your trolley, usually a trolley, and you pull up there to the cashier and you want to offload your stuff. You have to remember to put the righetto, the line, that little thing that separates your groceries from theirs. In other countries, this might not be so essential because you know where your groceries end and the next person comes. But in Italy, it's essential because you will be being pushed from the moment you set your first item on that conveyor belt of the trolley to pay the cashier. You will be being pushed from behind, and you'll know that you're being pushed. You'll be severely being pushed, trust me. So you start putting your stuff, and before you've even taken it all out of the trolley, the person behind you is already pushing their trolley into the back of your heels, is huffing and puffing, and has already started pushing their stuff onto the conveyor belt. God help you if you haven't already put the line between the two of you, because they're all going to be mixed. And from that moment, even if it only takes 5 seconds for you to go through, and probably it'll take longer if you've got a bunch of stuff and you have to pay with a card or whatever, you will get the distinct feeling that you're in the way and you're being pushed, and you just have to get used to it. And I still haven't got used to it. 23 years I've been doing it, and it never gets any easier. And regularly, I actually go out of the supermarket after one of these tussles and feel I cannot take it anymore. It's just ridiculous. It's so rude. It's so disrespectful, but I have to just get on with it. And maybe after I've lived here for 30 years, I'll start doing the same, but I don't think so. Where I was brought up, you wait your turn, you put your groceries through, you pay the card, you obviously don't try and dilly-dally so you frustrate the people behind you. You put your stuff in your bag. I always take a trolley, so my shopping trolley's right there, and I've packed it before you can say, hey, presto. No, I'm always being pushed. And occasionally I turn to them and say, would you like to jump over me? Because until I've actually moved my groceries along here and put them in my trolley, you can't jump in front of me. And they look at me like, and some of them insult you, some of them just, or as soon as they hear you're a foreigner, because they can hear by your Italian you're a foreigner, they'll start having a conversation with the cashier, insulting you and saying how stupid you are and how idiotic you are. It drives me absolutely wild, because all you're doing is just paying for your groceries. But it'll happen. And it won't happen once, it won't happen twice, it'll happen all the time. And anyone says it doesn't happen is lying through their teeth. So there's that. Okay, so that's a one point that I'll never get used to. Happens all the time. Also in the post office, they have a numbers system, and that stops people jumping in line. But there's always family and friends. There's always room for an exception in Italy. And family and friends always get a lot of extra attention. So maybe the guy working in the post office has a friend or a contact or whatever, and they'll always just push in, because there's always, even though they have to follow the numbers, the system, you get a number when you go in. Eventually there'll be somebody who'll push in line. And so it is. And so you just have to get used to it. And just about anywhere where you wait, maybe at the bread counter, maybe at the, if you're getting cold cuts, meat cut or whatever, at the counter inside the shop, the deli, the supermarket, somebody will push in front and they will insist they have been there before you. I don't know. The English are very polite. We say sorry a lot. We open doors. We give way to people. But anyway, if you've ever driven in a car with an Italian, you have my full support. Or you've driven your own car on an Italian road with other Italians around you, you will know exactly what I mean. You will know very clearly that they will be right up your exhaust pipe the whole way, and they will be pushing you, and you don't have the option to say, well, I'll just go slowly, and if you don't like it, tough, you'll have to deal with it. You can't do that. You can't do it, because they will literally crash into you. I'm always amazed that there aren't many more accidents on Italian roads. Goodness knows these people are incredibly impatient. Yeah, and I'll never get used to it. I've tried to get used to it, and I never will. So there's that. Another thing, whether you are switching on your phone, having your gas connected, your mains gas connected, because in Italy we use natural gas, so the mains gas gets connected, having your electricity switched on, whatever you have to do. Let's say you bought a house or you managed to rent a place. That's a whole nother process. You think, okay, I'm high and dry, everything's great now, I could just move ahead. And you set aside the day to go and switch these things on, your utilities. It's never going to be enough. So let's take the example when I recently moved, had the same internet, the same gas, whatever, for years, and then recently moved, so I had to go to a new place to have my internet switched on. Okay, it's pretty simple. I know how to do it. I've done it a couple of times in Italy. It's really not an issue, apparently. But apparently it completely depends on the mood of the person serving you in the shop where you're going to switch. So let's say mine was Vodafone, for example. I go in there, I have all my bits and papers, have my carta d'identità. I'm an Italian citizen, so I don't have to be asked anymore for my permesso di soggiorno, but you probably might do. So anytime you do anything official, since Brexit happened, whether you go to the bank or whatever, they will also ask you for your carta sanitaria, because your carta sanitaria will also have your, which is the health card. It'll also have all your other credentials, like your tax number, so they can see immediately that you're in the Italian system. So they might ask you for that too. And if your permesso di soggiorno isn't sorted out, you're going to be dealt with as a non-resident. And being a non-resident, believe me, attracts a higher price for gas, electricity, whatever. But you won't know this when you're still a tourist. But of course, I know this by now. And it doesn't happen to me anymore. But of course, at one stage it did. But let's leave that aside. Hey, those are Italian rules. What can you do about them? So you get in there and you explain to her that you want your internet switched on. There's all kinds of adverts outside. Come in and, we're the best. We'll connect you quickly. All of this lovely stuff. If you have a Partita, you can have it connected more quickly, which is to set up a business so that your Partita is your tax, where you charge VAT. Anyway, so you go and then you do all of this, and then you deal with the person's in a bad mood. The person's had a bad day. It can happen anyway. You say, okay, fine, try. And they will just drag their feet, and every question you ask, they won't answer you. They'll interrupt you. They'll tell you, they will automatically assume you're a complete idiot because you weren't born in Italy. And even if you're speaking fluent Italian, they can still hear, because there will always be a different inflection in your voice that you aren't. And even if they compliment you and say, oh, you speak Italian like a native, which I get told all the time, they can still hear that you're not native, obviously. In the same way you can hear a Dutch person speaking English. Even if they speak perfect English, there's always the Dutch inflection. Anyway, so now you're immediately an idiot because you can't possibly understand how complicated life is in Italy. And so you just go through the motions. And if you manage, it might take you a whole day of standing there listening to these people. And let's say you manage to do it, right? Let's say you manage to get this internet connected. After a month, something will go wrong because maybe they put that on your credit card, but you needed to have a bank transfer every month, and they won't give you that rate. If you just paid upfront, you need to have a permanent order against your bank account to get that preferential rate for your internet. So you have to go back in there. And I went back in 5 times to the same woman who gave me the same attitude. And eventually I came to the point where she was being so hostile and so rude to me that I said to her, what is your problem? What is your problem? Why are you speaking to me in this way? And why are you making my life so difficult? I came in here to get internet. I now need to, change the payment order to a constant bank order, which you asked me to do, the bonifico, as we say in Italian. And yeah, but you can't, you'll have to go to Milan. I said, no, I'm not going to Milan. I don't live in Milan. I live in a completely different province from Milan. And she says, then you'll have to do it online on your phone. I said, well, no, but I'm here. You signed me up and now you can change it for me. I can put in the form here. I mean, you are the people I came to. It's you. Yes, but it's easier if you do it on your phone. So she starts phoning some, one of these 800 numbers that just rings and rings. So, I mean, you could spend days and days and days and days and days of your life in Italy on a phone, waiting for, and look, this happens all over the world. I'm not saying it only happens in Italy, but in Italy it has a whole nother level. Trust me when I say that. I've lived in 5 different countries. Yeah. Eventually, out of desperation, went back in the week later after I said to her, what is your problem? And I said to her, look, if I come in the shop again and you insult me, I'm actually just going to cancel my internet, and I'm going to go to the post office and get their internet because they have a decent offer. So she sort of looked at me half-heartedly as if to say, as if I care. And I said, can you please just assist me to make an order? So I filled in the form, I gave it to her. Turns out it didn't work. I literally had to go to my bank and make a whole hoo-ha of filling in this form and whatever. Anyway, so bureaucracy in Italy, whatever form it takes, even after you've got your permesso di soggiorno, even after you've got all your immigration stuff sorted, even after you've registered in the comune and the vigile's been to your house and check that you actually live there, check how many rooms the house has, check if it's habitable, and you are now a permanent resident, you're a proper resident in your comune, and you've done all the million things you have to do, the lights, the water, electricity, whatever. There will still be times where you've got to fill in an extra form. You'll go to the comune and find out it doesn't work like that, it works like that. Most of it has no sense attached to it. It's not logical, it's not sensical, it's just nonsensical. But there's nothing you can do about it. And if you get your knickers in a twist, and if you get your blood pressure rising, and you get angry and you get upset, I've had to learn to just actually just swallow and bite my tongue and clench my teeth and just think, you're just going to make your own blood pressure go up. You're just going to affect your own health. Nobody's going to care. They're all worried about their situation, their problems. Okay? So, people that I know who have recently taken out the elective visa, come to Italy to be resident, have had 6 or 7 months wait, and they're still waiting to get their permesso di soggiorno. So when you've done all the paperwork to come here on an elective visa, I'm not going to talk about the elective visa tonight. There's videos up there, so I'll hook them up there on the playlist, and you can go watch that. But let's say you've done all of that. It's all, you get it, you've been awarded it, you arrive in Italy, you've got the house, you've managed to find a place to rent, you've signed the contract, you've got your electricity, you've got your internet, you've got everything. But the thing that you need the most is a permesso di soggiorno, to go to a bank and open a bank account, to go and do any contract that's in your personal name. You'll need a permesso di soggiorno to let them know that you are now permanently resident in Italy and that you have permission to stay in Italy and you're not a tourist anymore. And just about everyone I've ever dealt with has waited up to a year or whatever. They give you a year to start with, and then you go on from there and you sign up for another year, and so it goes on. And maybe after 5 years, if everything's perfect and all your paperwork's right and you've paid your taxes and everything's great, after 5 years you could apply for permanent residence. And then after 10 years, if everything, all the documents are perfect or whatever, you paid your tax and whatever, all your documents have been properly translated and you don't have a criminal record, whatever, you could apply for naturalization. But first you need your permesso di soggiorno. And so you've thought, God, I've covered all these hurdles. I'm successfully living in Italy. I found a place to live, but you don't have your permesso di soggiorno. And I have various friends who are sitting in this position right as we speak. They don't have their permesso di soggiorno. There is no reason, there is no way to check. They've phoned the place, they've gone in there, they've torn out their hair, they've first been very smiley and friendly and said, oh, what lovely Italians, how lovely they've been to me. Let me be very positive. And eventually they're literally tearing their hair out and crying because nothing can start. The clock doesn't start ticking, and there's a whole lot of stuff you can't do. You can't get a bank account until that happens. You can't get on the health system until that happens. You can't do any. You can't get a doctor. You can't get a family doctor. You can't do anything. This thing hasn't started yet. So you might be saying to yourself, I'm living in Italy and isn't this glorious? And I'm now going to the market and buying all my lovely fresh fruits and vegetables, which I dreamed of doing. But the clock hasn't started ticking yet because you don't have your permesso di soggiorno. Literally, a permesso soggiorno literally means a permission for you staying, the soggiorno, a visit, a staying visit in Italy. Yeah. But that will just be one step if you manage to eventually get your permesso di soggiorno in a list of stuff that you have to do. I have been a citizen for some years now, so I don't have to renew any permesso di soggiorno or carta soggiorno because I was a European Union person. I haven't had to do that for years, but that doesn't mean I don't have to deal with bureaucracy. Oh my goodness, I'm constantly having to deal with bureaucracy. You could say, yeah, but isn't it bad in France? Isn't it bad? Yeah, I have lots of friends in France and that live across Europe, and they complain about it a little bit. But Italy has a special brand of bureaucracy that you will never understand. And people say, yeah, but it's different in Sicily and it's different in the south because everything's slower. No, it's bad in the north too. Trust me, I've had to, register for various things for, whatever, changing doctors, changing systems, changing hospitals, whatever. It's always a long and winding process. I recently had to move my file from, if you want to go up and watch my latest health scare, you might like to know that. That'll give you some indication of how the health system works for me, a citizen living here. I had to move from one hospital to another hospital in the same region because the specialist I need is in this hospital. It was a nightmare of paperwork. I have my file. I'm on the system. They have my whole folder, my medical folder. No, but somebody physically had to go and fill out the form, and nobody wanted to do it because they're all busy. They're medical doctors. They're busy, obviously. And to move me from this piece of paper to that piece of paper was a flippin' headache. And the only way that I could get it done was to insist I wasn't leaving that room until it was done, because they kept saying to me, come back another day, do it another day. We can't do it. Maybe you should phone them and ask them to transfer you. It was just a nightmare. But I've learned to just take a deep breath. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're not in the mood to take a deep breath. You're not in the mood. Maybe think something else has gone wrong and you're not in the state of mind that you're just going to let it roll over you or let, water off a duck's back, so to speak. Yeah, it doesn't always work that way. So, yeah. Another thing that drives me crazy. So we've touched on bureaucracy. I haven't even, that's one drop in the ocean of the bureaucracy you're going to have to deal with. And you may say, yes, but it's lovely and you have a nice health system. And I've come from America where you can bankrupt yourself just to go and see a doctor. Yes, I understand all of that. But when you're physically having to do it, and when you physically don't know why you don't have your permesso di soggiorno, and you physically don't know why you can't be on the health system yet because they haven't given you a reason why, they told you it would be 4 weeks and it's now more than 8 months and you still don't have it, and you have nothing that you have to do extra. It's nothing you did wrong. They don't give you an answer. They keep sending you, this one sent you there. It's just pass the parcel. They just pass the parcel around. And if you don't have language skills, this is super, super, super stressful because you're literally just being toyed with. I don't have that problem anymore, but that doesn't mean I don't have problems. Anyway, let's get to culture, because this is the thing that you probably fell in love with. You saw all these people and all the family orientation, and everyone said, Italians are so family orientated, whatever. If you're living here miles away from your family, as I am, they're across the ocean, my adult children, my siblings are right across the ocean. Okay, I've lived away from my nuclear family for many years, so I have very close friends, and in a way you build up your own family wherever you move, and you may be in that position. You may be starting over as a person in Italy, and you may say, well, I'll make friends or whatever, how bad can it be? I'll go home once a year, whatever, money allowing. I mean, if you have tons of money and you're rich, a lot of these problems, you can soften the corners of them. You can get somebody else to wait in the line for you. You can pay your way through lots of things. You can fly home at the drop of a hat. But if you don't, and I think that's the majority I'm talking here, it's really, really hard, because if you're on a budget and you're coming to Italy because you've heard the cost of living is cheaper and wonderful and all of that you've heard, and it's going to cost you a fraction of what it costs you to live in the States or Australia or whatever, yes, but you're living without your family, and that has a huge, huge impact on you long term. The fact that when I have a good moment and when I have achievements to celebrate and when I have bad days, when I have health problems, I've had all of those things. You cannot just sit down with your family and talk through them. Yes, of course, now with technology, I can have a WhatsApp call, and I had Skype as well. And yeah, I can, they're right there. It's video conferencing is great. But that you're not in the same room as them, yeah. And you don't want to worry them. You don't want to cry or rant and rave because they're in another country and it's going to worry them. They don't have access to you. So all of these things have to be managed. And another thing that I've noticed over the years is the majority of people who are coming to retire in Italy, and not only Italy, France and other countries, have been inundated by requests for people to come to retire in the last, let's say, decade. It may be even more in the last 5 years, is that a lot of them are single women who have already raised their family, or they didn't have a family, but they are widows, or they are divorced, or they are wanting to come to Europe and have a second life. And that's all great and good. I think it's marvelous. I think it's great. But you're going to be incredibly lonely if you remove the fact that, yes, you could make friends here, but it takes time, and Italians stick together like most Europeans do. I mean, I have French friends. They don't have one single friend. They live in France. If you marry an Italian, or you marry a French person, or you marry a foreigner, a Spanish person, then that's your way in. But even so, you will be treated differently. But at least you can go and visit in people's homes or whatever. But as a foreigner, and you're always going to be a foreigner. I'm an Italian citizen, and I have been for quite a long time, and I've been here 23 years. But I'm still a foreigner. I'm always going to be a foreigner. I'll always be the odd, strange English person in the room. You don't get invited into people's homes. You don't. So whatever you hear all these bloggers on YouTube, this and that. I'm an incredibly gregarious person. I meet hundreds of new people on a weekly basis. I chat a lot. I make friends easily. And I can tell you, I have my gorgeous friends here, many of whom are not Italian. I have been part of an Italian family, have had Italian in-laws. And so I don't suffer from that loneliness problem, but I do suffer for the fact that I don't have my family close to me. And now that I'm a single person, I find that my long-term friends are very valuable to me. I do have, and I have recently moved provinces. I have a lovely bunch of friends I can go and have a coffee with, a glass of wine with, or whatever. We can chat liberally, but we can't mix. I can't mix my Italian friends in with my English friends, because immediately there will be a divide. So we're either going to speak Italian, only Italian, or we're going to speak English. So regularly I get invited to like a birthday party, and there'll be a bunch of English people or foreigners, quite often Dutch people, lots of Dutch people in my region. And they'll be having a gathering, and we'll all gather, and we'll just speak English. some of those people are married to Italians, so they speak Italian all day. I mean, I conduct my whole life in Italian, so I'm speaking Italian all day too. But there won't be any mixing. And this beautiful thing of you'll be taken into the community. I can't count the number of times women have said to me, I'm so lonely. I saw these beautiful piazzas full of these happy people or whatever, but I'm not being taken in. You won't be invited as a woman into a couple's life. You won't be invited when all these Italian couples go to dinner or whatever. You just won't be invited. It's just a fact of life. If you're married to an Italian man, and maybe there's a way in there, but even so, you'll be kept at arm's length. This is just a fact of the culture. You can ignore it, you can explain it away, you can pretend it isn't happening, but believe me, I've seen it happen to so many people. It still may mean that your life in Italy is okay and you can handle that, and you have your long-term friends online, and maybe they come and visit you once a year, or maybe you go home quite often and you're lucky you're able to do that. But at a certain point, many people reach a crisis here because they're not being taken in. They can't access that culture that they loved and saw in the piazza when they went on holiday and they didn't understand. And once you start understanding what's being said around you, you might hear a couple of things you really don't want to hear about what they're saying about you and stupid tourists, or what they're saying about other people that you find quite aggressive and quite negative. But this is just how life is. You can't avoid it. So, yeah. So that's one of the things that I found, not so much recently for myself, because maybe I've learned to deal with it, but certainly with friends that I was hoping could integrate here, and people I've helped move in that I could integrate here. But this could happen in France. It could happen in any country. And language is a huge barrier. People are often saying, but we live in a small world, and will it matter if I don't speak Italian? Yeah, it really does matter. It makes your life incredibly complicated. And there is a major barrier to anyone getting through to you. The print is so small on this live, and I'm too scared to touch it, seeing as we've gone offline 3 times tonight. Let me see if I can see. I can't really see anything. It's too small. Anyway, if you're joining us, please don't forget to like. And yeah, let me carry on with my little story. So yeah, I'm very appreciative of all the lovely things. I've managed to build a new little garden. I love my life here. I travel quite a bit. I went to France twice last year. Europe's lovely because you can go anywhere by train. So there's super lovely things that, that encompass my life here in Italy. I've built my life to exclude the stuff that I don't want in it, and to really take advantage of the stuff that I do love, that I live in a place that's bursting with nature and beauty. I live on Lake Maggiore. I'm very, very lucky from that point of view. Yeah, and I've got my life as I wanted. I don't need all the stuff that I had when I was younger. I give away and I donate a lot of stuff, and I try and have a house, even though I'm not a minimalist in any way. I'm a maximalist. I love layers of things. I love keeping my house beautiful and entertaining people, which I've done all my life, having beautiful dinner parties and that. I've had to adjust slightly in Italy. I do have lovely friends. I'm always invited for Easter and Christmas, but it's taken years and years to build that up. And I'm not sure that I could have just jumped into that in 2 years. I mean, within, let's say, 5 years of coming to live in Tuscany, I was married to an Italian, and obviously I had Italian in-laws and visited them on the weekends and got used to their culture and their ability. But I was always a little bit over there, even though I was married. Obviously, if you have an Italian-born children, that's another step in. But if you're coming here as a woman or even as a man of a certain age, and you're thinking that you're just going to plug in here to a social scene and be invited out to dinner parties and be going. No, it's really something that you're going to have to get used to. I mean, just last week I was invited to 2 plays. We have a lovely theatre here. I'm lucky, by some friends, but they are single people and they're English speaking, and they've been here longer than I have, and so I am included. And I have other Italian friends, but they spent their whole life abroad in South Africa, so we have that connection, because we understand that culture. Even though they are 100% Italian, they speak English, and when we're together we speak English, but that's highly unusual. And that's only happened recently. Generally, I think getting into the culture will be the real problem that you will have with Italy, the real trouble that you will have, even once you get all your bureaucracy sorted, if it ever is. But let's say you get the major stuff done, is going to be being brought into the culture, because we are human beings. Human beings were designed to connect with each other, to be with each other, to have connections together. So yeah, I've always been teased in Italy by Italians. In the beginning, when I couldn't speak Italian and I didn't know what was going on around me, I used to walk around, and my in-laws and also the whole extended family used to laugh at me, because I was always saying fantastic. I found everything fantastic. We'd go into Florence and I'd love fantastic, and I couldn't see all the problems underneath. Of course, I didn't understand anything about the culture. And Italians are really quite discreet about praising stuff and going on. They don't compliment easily. They don't continue to say everything's wonderful. They're quite sort of circumspect about things. But anyway, there I was blundering around, and I'm still doing the same thing after 25 years, blundering around, saying everything was fantastic and beautiful and wonderful. And then, I obviously now I've been living here a long time. I have my moments where I have a rant and a little complain. And of course, if you're complaining about Italy, don't do it to Italians. They can complain all day, like most people, but you can't complain ever. So just don't do it to them. Certainly. Don't do it in front of them or whatever. And that can bring its own stresses, by the way. But I just love so much of life here that I'm always positive. And Italians now are intrigued by me. They're saying, why are you here? What brought you here? And they're kind of suspicious of me, because why am I having such a good time? Why am I smiling and being so happy and whatever, when their lives they feel are difficult and challenging or whatever? Yeah, and so they're a little bit circumspect sometimes of me. Even now, even my long-term Italian friends will sometimes say to me, but is it so good? Or, yeah, I think you're exaggerating. It's not so good. It's not so wonderful, whatever. Or they try and sort of pick away at my positivity. So that's something you're going to have to get used to. And maybe it would happen elsewhere, I don't know. But you're always going to be the foreigner. I think the other trouble I have with Italy, and certainly in giving others advice and helping others who want to immigrate here, is that all is not what it seems. And so there's a lot of stuff on YouTube, a lot of YouTubers saying how cheap Italy is to live. You can live cheaply here. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. I've already said more than once in this video, if you have money, Italy is a paradise. I think it's one of the best paradises. There are people who say, no, I'd rather go and live in UAE, or I'd rather go and live in Dubai because of tax. So let's just deal with the realities of Italy. You may be coming from New York and America, and yes, maybe it is cheap compared to that, but you have to compare apples with apples. You can't compare New York to a town in Italy, or even a small city in Italy. And you can't compare New York to Milan. Milan has 2 million people. It's a small city. It might be the center of the world in Italy, but you can't make these comparisons. You need to compare apples and apples. So you can compare London. Greater London has, 14 million or 12 million, whatever it is, at last count 13 million, and New York about the same, or maybe a bit more, the periphery of New York. Those two cities you can compare, yes. But you can't compare your life in a big city or even a big town in America with your city here, or Australia, Sydney, Cape Town, whatever you want to compare. It just doesn't compare. So it's not cheap, number one. Yes, you may be able to get a house in the deep south or even in the middle, in the central part of Italy, or even in Marche on the Adriatic coast, or in Tuscany on this coast. Maybe you can. Maybe you can get a nice apartment for one person or two people, or maybe there's more of you than that, and you can get it for under 1,000 or whatever. If you're in Milan, forget about, and you want to come to Milan because it's bustling, and maybe you have illusions that you could work there online. It's virtually impossible to find anything that isn't the size of a cupboard for less than 1,200 euro. And that's without utilities, and that's without all of that. So, and it's going to be incredibly small because it's always had, a huge university population that comes in and out. So accommodations at a premium. But you may be lucky. You may find a nice flat for, let's say, 600, 700, 800 euro in a small place. And with your utilities, let's say you can live for 1,000, and then if you put your food on top of that for a single person, let's say you can live for 1,400 euro. But you're going to have to watch your pennies to live that way. You're not going to be going out and, eating when you like and shopping when you like and having luxury cappuccinos and cocktails and Negronis all the time. You're not. You're going to have to live literally extremely carefully. If you're a family and there's two of you that have an income, then that's fine. But finding work in Italy is a whole nother story. But let's say you're retired and you have an amount of money and you have to watch your budget. And the majority of people who are writing to me or even watching this, they are on a budget. If they were wealthy, they would be, doing whatever they're doing, buying a villa and get somebody to sort out all the other little details. But for the average person, it's not as cheap as you imagine it is. Groceries have gone up here on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And since the pandemic, that was the sort of permission for things to just go to any price they like, because things weren't available during there, and then the price went up, and people lose touch with prices after a while. But, if I look at me as a person, shopping for one person, I eat well, but I don't eat many luxuries. I have to budget. If I look at what I was doing 6 years ago, 7 years ago, going to the market, filling up a whole trolley load of beautiful fruits and veggies, and, I ate whatever I wanted, nice cheeses, a bottle of wine occasionally bought, all of that. It cost less than half what it costs me now, literally, for everything. That's from toilet paper to, face cream to whatever you want to call it, dish soap, anything you have to buy on a regular basis. It is not cheap. Europe isn't cheap as a rule, but Italy somehow has this reputation because somebody went on holiday down in the deep south of Italy, or they went to Sicily and they found a little shop and they found some cheap stuff. You're not living there on a long-term basis, and you're not in a position to make a position. Yes, maybe it is a whole bunch cheaper than America, Australia, or whatever you're comparing it to, but you have to live within your budget, and it isn't as cheap as you imagine it is. And it goes up every week. My electricity bill goes up. I would say I regularly have to relook at my contract and renegotiate it, because there are deals that come up, but they fall away after a year. So yeah, I'm constantly having to watch that. But if I take my costs as they were 6, 7 years ago, all of them across the board, my utilities, my food, all the stuff, and I compare it to today, it's double. It's just double, and I'm not earning double, and I don't have double money to live on. I just don't. None of us do. Unless you suddenly a day trader and investing, and the only day trader that ever makes any money online. I don't know. But people have these illusions that they'll come to Italy and they'll just work online, even though they've signed a declaration that they won't work. Let's get to tax. Italy is highly taxed as a nation. And if you believe that you're going to come here and you're going to hide your work that you do in the States online, and you're just not going to pay tax in Italy, it's not going to work, because it will actually be discovered sooner or later. So if you come to Italy on an elective visa, you are not allowed to work in any way, shape, or form. Okay? You're also going to have to pay tax. Yes, I know people go on about the 7% zone that you get for so many years. So they give you that initial period. But that's only if you live in certain zones, and you may not want to live in certain zones. They're normally zones that they're trying to redevelop, so they don't have good hospitals, good services, and they might be miles from anywhere. You might be different. I'm just talking about me, my personal situation, my life in Italy. I live in the north. I've never had a problem with access to hospitals and stuff. I'll cover waiting lists. That's another issue that many people don't look at when they're glorifying the Italian life. It could happen anywhere. I'm just telling you the realities of life. But tax in Italy is a huge issue. Most people who earn, let's say, above 3-4 grand, which is really the top of the cream in Italy, earn that amount. Many people here earn, some people, quite a lot of people actually, earn less than $1,000 a month. So they really live on the breadline. And then there's the whole big band of people who live between $1,500 and $2,500 a month they earn. They all pay enormous amounts of tax. And if you're over a certain period, you're going to be paying half your income. If you're over a certain limit, which is about 4,000 or 5,000, you're going to be paying half your income in tax every month. And there's no escape. There's no escape. Yes, there are many people in Italy who work in Nero, and they're clever, and there's a lot of sort of white collar crime, and they don't pay tax. But the average person in Italy, believe me, pays tax, and it's a lot of tax. And that's only one tax. Then there's VAT, and there's municipal tax for collecting your rubbish. There's a lot of taxes, okay? Plus, you're going to have to contribute what we call contributing in Italy, which is your social security, which if you're working for yourself, you mean to make sure it's paid. It's normally deducted from your salary if you work for an employer. And that goes towards financing the state health service. It's not that it's completely free, you're paying for it, but you have to make contributions. You can't just come here and start claiming, on the health system. Obviously, you would have to have a year's health insurance if you come on the elective visa, but that just covers you for emergencies. It's like a hospital plan. But eventually, if you get on the health system, you're going to have to cover it. You're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay. It still may be a lot cheaper than where you are. I'm simply saying, don't be under the illusion that everything's free and it's for nothing. It isn't. Trust me. Let's get to you need some urgent health care, and you can't wait, which has happened to 2 of my friends in the last few months. You need an operation. It's an urgent operation, and you're on the waiting list. First, you have to see a specialist, and then you put on the waiting list. And you may have to wait 6 months. You may have to wait 2 years. A friend of mine was just told there's a 2-year wait for what she needed, which is quite urgent. And so the only solution she had, luckily her husband had the savings put by, and they'd been saving all their lives, and she had to go and see a private consultant, and she had the surgery done at a private clinic and paid privately. It cost a fortune, that she got it done. And that is a reality that many people don't have. This is not my situation. I couldn't have this done. I have to rely on the health service. So if I needed an operation, I'd have to wait in line. And there's, over 60 million people waiting with you. So it's not as if, you can just jump the queue. You can't. And some regions are better than others and whatever, and it will be decided by your region and your province and their ASL, which is the medical services that you do your booking through, that manage the whole thing, that manage your contributions to the health system. You're not in control of whether you can or not have an operation. You may be in a position where you have enough money that you can fly home to the States or Australia, wherever you came from, to have that operation with your family's support or whatever. But lots of people aren't. And many of the people who are coming here to retire cheaply, I say cheaply in inverted commas, can't do that. So then you're stuck. What are you going to do now? You're without your family, and there's nobody that you have close to you. Maybe you've made a couple of friends, but you need this operation, or you need urgent health that's not covered, or you've got to wait even once you get on the health system. These are issues that people never look at. So, yeah, these are some of the problems you can have. But I think perhaps the biggest problem of all is this kind of perception that everything in Italy is easier and shorter and more beautiful, and Italians dress more beautifully, they eat more beautifully. Yeah, a lot of them do, but a lot of them are scraping along on the bottom and really having tons of health problems, family issues, can't afford a divorce, can't get free of an abusive situation. There's lots of that stuff happening in Italy. And if you're living in the medium or, low cost, you're going to come into contact with those people. They're going to be your neighbors. They're going to be living in the flat next to you. As I say, if you have money and you can buy a beautiful villa and you can swan around and go home 3 times a year, this is not your problem. But otherwise, you're going to deal with the nitty-gritty that other Italians, and they might be quite resentful that you having an operation on the system when they're waiting. They don't care to investigate the fact that you've paid your way, that you paid into the system, that you've paid for your medical care by contributions. They just see you as the tourist that came here and is taking advantage of their situation. So all Italians aren't welcoming and loving. I mean, some of them are under huge pressure, and they might see you as somebody undesirable, and you have to deal with that. And hey, maybe you're the kind of person you can let it wash over you and it's really not a problem, or maybe you're not. I'm simply saying these are some of the problems you can have in Italy. So yes, so my pet hates are always the driving, the supermarket queue, in the bank or whatever, and also just people who will just make your life difficult simply because they may be xenophobic, and you might bump up against xenophobic people, and they don't see why you're here, and they don't understand why you're here, and they just feel like they need to drag their feet and make your life difficult, or question whether you really are do something or not, or question whether you really can do something or not when you know you can. So I hope that's been interesting for you, this little slice of my life. But generally, I have a wonderful life here. I mean, it could be a lot worse, and I've had a scrape in the last month or so with quite a lot of health issues that I've had to once again, come up to the rock face of access to Italian healthcare and what they can do and what they can't do for you. But yeah, I try to manage my health. I live a very healthy life. I don't drink coffee, by the way. Some of the things you might want to know about me. I decided next week to do a video on who am I, so I can give you some background of who I am and how my life is. I don't drink coffee. So in Italy, occasionally I might have a decaffeinated cappuccino, but coffee doesn't react well with my arrhythmia. I'm not really a drinker. I have an occasional glass of wine these days. So yeah, so I don't come up against that in Italy, because a lot of people think it's all lovely cocktails out. Young people do drink quite often, but Italians, as a rule, you very rarely see a drunk Italian out, if you ever do, unless they're very young. So I eat a very healthy diet. I'm lucky in that I can buy very good produce, and yeah, it costs quite a bit. As I mentioned, double what it cost a couple of years ago, but I try and manage it. I live on a very careful budget. So yeah, my life could be 50 times worse, and I'm not complaining in any way. I'm very grateful for everything I have, and for the lovely friends I have, and the colleagues that I keep in touch with, that I work with through the years. And just, yeah, I have great Italian friends too. So that's what I'm talking about tonight. So if you sadly were watching twice when somehow YouTube, the live stream got cut off after 5 minutes and I had to start again, I'm so sorry. Hopefully you eventually found your way to this. And if you're watching this back later, please leave me a comment down there. I want to know your impression, or I just want to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you, and hope this was interesting for you, this little slice of my life. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. What you waiting for? I give you real content from Italy, not nonsense that people are talking about third hand or fourth hand, about, stuff, important information. And you can always find my email down in the description box if you want to write and ask for some advice on relocation. And for the rest of it, please like the video. I really appreciate your likes, and thank you so much to all my lovely followers from wherever you're watching from. Leave me a comment down there. I look forward to it, and I will see you on the next one soon. Let me see if I know how to switch this off, because it's so very tiny, the script on here. See if I can actually get out of this live, otherwise I'll have to be here all night. Oh, there we are. Bye. 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 Bye.